Okay, so you got dumped and your ex has an avoidant attachment style, either a fearful one or a dismissive one. But either way, you went into no contact, which is absolutely the right strategy. And your ex didn't expect you to last very long in no contact. In fact, they expected you to break it within weeks of them dumping you. And you see, avoidants typically see their exes as needy, clingy, smothering, and controlling. And probably you were that way a little bit because their behavior can bring out the worst in us because they tend to shut down on an emotional level without warning, and you have no idea what the hell just happened. But because they saw you that way, and because they value their independence more than anything else, they didn't expect you to be able to stay in no contact for very long, but you have. So in this video, we're looking at exactly what happens with avoidance when you stay in no contact and remain silent far longer than they expected. And that could lead them back to you if that's what you want and if you play your cards right. And we're getting into all of that right now, so let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Coach Jeff Campbell, and I'm glad you're here with me. So initially, right after they dump you, they don't expect you to be able to stay silent for very long. They expect you to beg and plead and be desperate and frankly pathetic. They mentally prepare for your emotional outbursts and frantic behavior. And they actually have responses ready to go. And they expect some typical patterns from you. First surprise, then anger, then sadness, then bargaining, and then finally acceptance. And it's okay if you're feeling all of those things on the inside, but you absolutely do not want to be expressing any of that to them. Stay vigilant in that no contact. Don't break it for any reason, and don't contact them in any way, shape, or form. And you remaining silent over the course of that first week or two is going to be confusing to them. They won't expect it. But at this point, they still assume it's temporary. The next phase comes between weeks 2 and 4 following the breakup. And at this point, they're shocked that you're still remaining silent and fully committed to your no contact. So they're going to start checking your social media more frequently than they had been. And they may become more obvious in that by checking your Facebook or Instagram stories because you can see their name showing up on a list of viewers. Now, the dismissive avoidant is not going to be anxiety-ridden over this, but they will be curious. The fearful avoidant, however, is starting to fully switch into an anxious attachment style because that's what fearful avoidants do when their primary partner pulls away. And that's exactly what you're doing by staying in no contact. And they're beginning to question if they completely misjudged you. Now you're beginning to enter into months 2 and 3. This is where the game starts to radically change. Up until now, your ex was convinced that you were just kind of playing hard to get, or maybe kind of playing mind games with them. Now they're really beginning to wonder if you'll ever come back, and even if they asked you to, would you come back? And they actually start to become afraid that maybe you're really moving on. And up until now, they've enjoyed the thought that you were always going to be there, waiting in the wings, in the background, in the event that they didn't find anybody better. They loved having you as a backup plan. And now they're definitely afraid that you're actually not going to fulfill that role. And overall, their confidence regarding the breakup and their decision to dump you is beginning to fall apart. And they're beginning to question everything, especially the fearful avoidant who is now in a full-fledged anxious attachment style panic. Now you're entering months 3 through 6. And I know to you who wants them back, this feels excruciating to have to wait this long. But this is pretty typical with avoidance, especially the dismissive avoidant. But now and only now is the avoidant really beginning to process the loss and the grief of losing you and the loss of the relationship. I know it seems crazy that it's taken this long, but only now are they really beginning to feel those feelings. And they're really beginning to grieve the loss of you and come to terms with the reality of what that actually means to not have you in their life. And they're beginning to see all of the places in their life where you used to be, things that you used to do for them, and how you used to complement their life. And now all of those absences are really painfully obvious. But it is worth pointing out that dismissive avoidants are still kind of intellectualizing this. They're still thinking about this in kind of logical terms and what the loss of you means logistically, whereas the fearful avoidant is literally falling apart from an emotional level with the loss of you. Real quick, if you like this video and you want to see more videos like it, give me a thumbs up and then destroy that subscribe button as well. It's a great way to say thank you to me, helps me grow my channel, and I really appreciate it. Now you've gone beyond month 6. And this is when the avoidant begins to realize that this was not a manipulation tactic. This was not some sort of strategy on your part to kind of win them back, but instead it's genuine detachment on your part. You have genuinely moved on. You're not looking in the rearview mirror. And at this point, from their perspective, you could not care less if they ever came back. Now, that may not be what you're feeling on the inside. Hopefully, you haven't just sat around during these 6 months waiting for them to come back, feeling lonely and desperate. Hopefully, you've used this time to focus on becoming the very best version of you that you can be, because that is your best strategy, not only for getting them back, but maybe finding somebody even better. But they're probably beginning to look at your social on a daily basis now, especially the fearful avoidant. And they're seeing your growth. They're seeing what you've been up to. They're seeing you living life to the fullest. And seeing that just contradicts their expectations for you in the wake of the breakup. They thought you'd be desperate and broken without them, and you're not. Now, at this point, it's highly unlikely that the dismissive avoidant or the fearful avoidant have reached out to you in any direct way. But now you can expect to start to see a little bit of that, especially from the fearful avoidant. But these will not be overt and direct forms of communication. It might be something like, hey, I happened to find your shirt the other day when I was doing laundry, or something benign like that. They're not going to say they miss you and want to see you. Not yet, at least not the dismissive avoidant. But the power balance between the two of you has now completely shifted, and your silence has done more for that than anything you could have possibly said. Now let's talk specifically the differences between the dismissive avoidant and the fearful avoidant. As you might expect, dismissive avoidants take a lot longer to come to terms with their feelings and realize and admit to themselves that they miss you and they regret breaking up with you. Fearful avoidants, as I mentioned earlier, have largely switched into an anxious attachment style where they are anxiety-ridden over the loss of you, and they're second-guessing every decision they made with regards to you and the breakup. And while it is likely at this point that the fearful avoidant might be reaching out, you may see a lot of hot and cold push-pull behavior, where maybe there's a flurry of activity on their social media, or maybe even a flurry of messages to you, and then nothing for several days following that. It's kind of back and forth because they can't help themselves, and then they realize what they've done, and they pull back. And then the cycle repeats. And I mentioned those practical excuses to reach out earlier, like a missing shirt, and that's going to be far more likely with the dismissive. They're going to look for very subtle reasons to reach out that don't have anything to do with being emotionally vulnerable. But both kinds of avoidance are absolutely struggling at this point. They're just expressing it a little bit differently. So what actually changes and what doesn't while you stay in no contact longer than they expected you to? Well, first, you have to understand that while an extended absence and silence on your part might make them reconsider their decision to dump you, it is in no way going to change or alter their attachment style, other than what I mentioned earlier about the fearful avoidant moving more into an anxious attachment style. That's naturally how they're wired. And while I can absolutely guarantee that at this point the avoidant is missing you and possibly regretting the breakup, it's highly unlikely that that is actually going to cause them to do any real work which could actually benefit the situation, such as getting into therapy. But what is far more common with avoidance is finding other ways to distract them from thoughts of you. For many, that is a rebound relationship where they just jump into a relationship with somebody new. Many times they will look for somebody either intentionally similar to you or intentionally polar opposite from you, but then they will begin to recreate all of the favorite things that the two of you used to do with the new person, going to the same restaurants, clubs, bars, and coffee shops. And it's almost like they're trying to pretend this new person is you. But eventually that will come crashing and burning because rebounds have about a 75% failure rate. Eventually the avoidant will realize that this new person isn't you and that they're not measuring up. But others may turn to drugs or alcohol to numb the pain of losing you and the loss of the relationship. But let's assume they do reach out to you in some way. How do you know if this time around things are going to be any different? Well, for starters, ask them what they've been doing to help the situation. Have they been going to therapy? And even if they haven't, do they have any level of awareness about attachment styles and specifically about their attachment style and how that impacts relationships? Look for genuine accountability. Many times with avoidance, there are a lot of overlap of symptoms with that and narcissistic personality disorder. And one of the hallmarks of both of those things is a complete lack of accountability. Many times they won't take ownership of anything they've done, and they always shift the blame onto somebody else. So if you're starting to see signs when they reach out to you that they are indeed taking accountability, at least to some degree, that's huge. You also want to get clarity on, are they missing you? Or are they missing what you did for them? Because there's a huge difference there. And many times people with an avoidant attachment style, as with narcissists, kind of look for people to take advantage of. That could be financially or otherwise. But if you were constantly doing things for them, putting their needs above your own, that might be what they're missing and not actually you. So the real question for you is, are they actually addressing the issues that they brought to the table and wanting to really find a way to forge a new, healthier relationship with you? Or are they just missing the loss of control over you? And remember, real change doesn't come out of somebody's mouth. It comes from their actions repeatedly over a period of time. And they need to earn another chance with you, not the other way around. They've got to prove that this time it's going to be different. And they've got to identify specifically what they're going to do to help make it different. No doubt you brought some issues to the relationship as well. I'm not saying this was all their fault, but many times avoidants think the other person is completely at fault and expect them to do all of the work and just kind of coast back into things. And you deserve better than that.